Recording now. This is lesson 1.5, subtracting integers with tiles and number lines. Before watching the recording, please make sure that you have the 1.5 subtracting integers with tiles and number lines worksheet in front of you, along with a red and yellow pencil crayon or pens and a pencil. If you need to pause the recording to retrieve those items, please feel free to do so. Now, I'm going to continue. And the first part of the lesson will be review from the previous lesson. So as you can remember, positive integers can be represented using yellow tiles. So I'm just going to have an example here. And negative integers can be represented using red tiles. So I'll have one example here. Which means a zero pair would have, remember, one of each, so it cancels each other out. So you have a yellow and a red, and I'm just going to write beside it. The yellow represents a positive 1. And a red represents negative 1. So together, that makes a zero pair. Now, zero pairs will be really key in understanding how this lesson works. So now we'll look at the example questions. So the first question you have on your page, it says subtract -2 minus -6. And I'm actually going to highlight that so that we're focused on what we have to answer. And it says, show this equation using integer tiles in the box below. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to represent and look at the first one. Like what we did with adding, I'm going to look at the -2 here. So remember, a negative integer is represented by red. So I'm going to do 2 red tiles here. And right now, also, I'm going to put -2 right beside it. Now, right now we have -2, but we don't actually have enough tiles to subtract -6 away. So what we want to do is we want to add the difference of tiles that we need, which is 4. So that's what I'm going to do right now. So I'm going to add 1, 2, 3, 4 tiles, okay? Now, the problem is that right now we're showing -6. We still want to show -2. So what we do is whatever amount of tiles we added to the original, which is 4, we're going to add the same amount on the opposite side. It's kind of like when you're balancing equations in algebra. So I'm going to add 4 tiles below here. 1, 2, 3, 4. Now this time you're not going to circle out the zero pairs as you did with addition, but as you can see, we're still showing -2, so you have to retain the value. Now, remember the original question was -2 minus -6. Well, now you take away -6 tiles. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So when you're crossing it out like this, make sure that I can still see and you can still see what's underneath the X. So what are you left with? You're left with +4, okay? And that's the answer to this question up here, okay? Now, let's do another example. I'm just going to erase this so that it's clearly above this so it doesn't get confusing. Okay, your next question. Now it shows number 1 here, but this should actually be question 2. Okay, continuing the recording. Now I'm going to take my highlighter again. I'm going to highlight the question I need to focus on, which is -6 minus +2. So we're going to do a similar process as the question above, where we're going to represent the first integer. So the first integer is -6. So if you want to pause the recording and figure out what you're going to do to represent -6, go ahead and do so, but I'm going to continue. I know that -6 can be represented by 6 red tiles. Now here we have a different problem because the second integer we need is +2. We actually don't have any yellow tiles to take away. So what we need to do is we need to add 2 yellow tiles for the +2, which I'll do below here. But again, we still need to represent -6. Right now, as it stands, we have 2 zero pairs, which makes the rest -4. So remember, whatever we do to one side of the integer, we have to do to the other side. Again, it's like balancing an equation. So if we added 2 yellow tiles, we actually have to add 2 more red tiles to keep the balance. Because here, as you can show, now we're still showing -6. So remember, it's the original equation is -6 minus +2. So look what we're going to do. We're going to take away the 2, and you're left with -8. And that's the answer to that question. -6 minus +2 is -8. Okay, so our next question here is +2 minus -6. Now again, the same process as before, I'm going to highlight +2 minus -6. So what we're going to do again, follow the same process as before. I'm going to write down +2 here, and you can go ahead and fill out what represents +2, and you model it and sketch it out 2 yellow tiles. Now, same problem as before as well. Our second integer is -6. We don't have enough tiles, and also we don't have any red tiles to take away. So you need to add the red tiles of -6. So you're going to do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Same problem as in a previous question. We're showing -4 here, but we still need to show +2. So what we need to do is we need to add, since we added 6 red tiles, whatever we do to one side, we do to the other side, like an equation in algebra. So we're going to add 6 yellow tiles to match the 6 red tiles we matched below. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. As you can clearly see, this tile set is still showing +2. If we look back at the original equation, we're doing +2 minus -6. So now we're going to take away all of the -6 tiles here, okay? And what are we left with? We are left with +8, okay? So that's +8 for you right there. Okay. +2 minus +9. Okay, so now we're going to continue with +2 minus +9, and now we're moving on to the number lines. So we're going to do a similar procedure for number lines as we did in the previous lesson, okay? So, and I'm going to keep with the same colors. Now, you don't necessarily have to color code on the number line, but make sure that you label each of the arrows and you stop at the appropriate places. So if you recall, the first integer will always start at 0, right? And we want to represent the first integer as being +2. So I'm going to take my yellow here. I'm going to draw my arrow. I'm going to stop at +2, and I'm going to take my pencil and label it +2. Now, we want to subtract +9. So where do we think the first part of the arrow will start for +9? We're going to start at +2 again, but this time we're going to go in the opposite direction, right? Let's see what will happen. So we're going to keep going until we hit 9 on the other side, or 9 spaces, sorry, and this is kind of messy here, and we stop at -7. Okay, let me redo that so that it's a little bit neater. Okay, so we have +2 here. I should leave myself more room here. We have +2, and then we're going to go back 9 spots from 2 here, and then we're going to label that as being negative 9. Now, you may realize we actually added instead of subtracted. We took positive 2 and we added negative 9. So actually another way to look at this, and I'm going to do this in a different color here, is what we actually did is we took positive 2 and we added negative 9, which is actually the same as this equation here, okay? So positive 2 plus negative 9 indicate where you end up on the number line with your arrowhead. The answer is actually negative 7, which I'll write up here, okay? If you're still confused, don't worry, we'll do the next one together as well. Okay, the next example is negative 2 minus positive 9. Now, it may be easier for you to think of it in terms of addition. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to, in a different color off to the side like what I did in the example above, I'm going to rewrite this equation. Because as we illustrated above, we're actually adding and we're doing the opposite thing. So negative 2 minus positive 9 is actually the same as negative 2 plus negative 9. There is a pattern emerging here, and we'll review the pattern at the end. So the same procedure as before. What we're going to do is we're going to take our first arrow, negative 2. Remember, we start at 0, and we're going to go backwards here from 0 to the left, and that's going to represent negative 2. Now, what we're going to do is we're going to add negative 9 to it. We're actually going to continue on the same side and in the same direction on the number line. So what we're going to do, and you may have to extend the number line by, and that's giving you a hint as to what the answer is. You're going to have to extend it until you hit 9 spots to the left there of negative 2, and you end up at negative 11. So as you can see, you actually added negative 2 and negative 9 to get a sum of negative 11, okay? Okay, your next question is negative 9 minus negative 4. Now, if we are rewriting the addition statement, again, we're doing the opposite operation, which is adding, and we're also changing the sign only of the second integer. So if we rewrite it, the first integer sign stays the same, and we're going to add positive 4. So both signs change to the opposite. In this case, 2 negatives equals 2 positives, which actually makes this equation a lot easier to solve. So again, the same process as before. You're going to take your yellow pen or your pencil, and you're going to go, you're going to go from 0, I meant to say red, from 0 to negative 9 right here, right? So 0 to negative 9. Okay. And then what you're going to do is you're going to look at the second integer, which is a positive 4. So what you're going to do is you're going to take your yellow and you're going to start from negative 9 and go 4 up until you reach, sorry, that's not very neat there, until you reach negative 5, okay? So the answer to negative 9 plus positive 4 is negative 5, okay? Okay, so this is the last question on your page. You have positive 4 minus negative 3. So again, it's easier to think of it in terms of addition. So what we're going to do is I'm going to rewrite it. So again, the sign of the first integer does not change. It's positive 4, and then the operation becomes addition, and then you're also going to change the sign of the second integer, which means it's positive 4 plus positive 3. Again, that makes it easier to represent and understand on the number line. So you're going to take, and you have both positive integers, you're going to take your pencil starting from 0, you're going to end at positive 4 there, and going to label it above here. Because the second integer is also positive, you're going to take the same color and move in the same direction, 3. So you're starting at 4, and then you're ending at positive 7, and you label that above. So the answer to positive 4 plus positive 3 is positive 7. In the box below, I've asked you to write down the pattern that's emerging from subtracting integers. And there's a basic one that you just need